The next definition under clearance is stop. And that's the dimension from the face of the stop to the face of the door when the door is in the 0 degree position. And there is always a dimension there, certainly when it comes to hollow metal doors and frames, because there will always be a stop there, or there will be something that will be meant to be positioned between the face of the stop and the inside face of the door. If you have a wood door and a wood frame, there can be a clearance there, or maybe there's not. It really all depends on whether or not you're going to be putting hardware there, like a frame silencer, whether it be for a steel frame or a wood frame. Let's switch to the screen view and let's take a closer look. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, here's that definition, stop. The distance between frame stop and the face of the door when the door is in the closed position, typically equal to the thickness of the silencer. Okay, so let's take a look at what that means. Now, let's do this. Okay, here's the door. Door swings out this way. What's happening here, this would be a preparation for a silencer. So that dimension, the space between here and here, that's going to be the space allotted. There's always a space here when it's hollow metal. Now what you can do sometimes is order the frame without these silencers, and I've done that in the past when I know that the client is installing gasketing. STC rated opening, or an application where there's some other provision that's happening. You know, we know that there's going to be gasketing here. So what ends up happening is they don't put the silencer here. That's left out. But the gap is still left there. This gap is also really important because the latch and where the frame is prepped for the strike requires this sort of gap to be here, in the sense that if there was no gap, the door still needed to be in the 0 degree closed position. Making contact with this hard metal stop would probably complicate that latching predictably, reliably all the time. So there would need to be a gap there. If it's a wood door and a wood frame, residential, I don't see it a built-in gap. However, if it's a wood door and a wood frame in a commercial setting, you're certainly going to have the possibility for a gap there. And it's important when you're building a door and frame to understand, what are you going to do here? What's going to happen in here? Because you need to account for that. And what I mean by that is, if you are building a wood frame and you're going to use a kerfed-in style gasketing, really commonly known as Q-line, that gap that's going to be between the face of the door and the face of the stop is going to be dependent on how much you're going to stick in here. So back to the hollow metal definition, this distance is usually the thickness of the head of the silencer. In my estimation, the rabbet is 1 15/16. Okay. I usually see 3/32 here and the balance here. It's about 3/32. So let's take a look at what that looks like when we're calculating it. 1.9375 minus 1 divided by 32 times 3 minus 1.75. Yeah, so 3/32, 0.09, because 1/32 of an inch is 0.09. So you're going to have a 30-second here between the face of the frame and the face of the door. If we drew that a different way, basically a 30-second from here to here, and a 30-second from here to here. Well, that's okay if that's what you're fitting in there. So let's take a look at the real common Ives SR64. Now, I don't have a dimension on what the face of that is. Well, they say it right here, 1/8 of an inch. There needs to be a small amount of compression there, and there would be. That's made of some type of rubberized product. So you're going to have, yeah, right here. So you've got to have that gap built in. That's 1/8 of an inch. It'll crush down a little bit, and that works out perfectly for this stuff. Now, getting on to what I was saying earlier, if it's a wood door and a wood frame, certainly in a commercial application, you would very likely see in the hardware set wood frame silencers. Well, that's the SR65 by Ives. Okay. However, in a residential application, you could very easily have Curved-in style weather stripping, commonly known as Q-Lon. It's the Q10 series from Pemco. The issue is you've got 5/8, you've got 3/8, you've got 1/2 inch, you've got 7/16. The gap that you're going to leave in here, this gap has to be completely dependent on what you're putting in there. So rather than a 3/32 gap, roughly, or 1/8 of an inch gap, roughly, you might have a gap much wider. You might have it 1/2 inch, and you might build the rabbet here from here to here might be 2.5 inch. Could be whatever, because you have to account for what you're putting in here. If something, whether it be obviously Q-Lon or it be just a silencer, so it has to be built based on that. Another thing to show regarding that, how tight of that type of position that it is, let's take a look at a Rixson template. Let's get to the manufacturer's page, manufacturer site, library, product documentation. Let's take a look at a template for floor closers. Okay, what I wanted to show was this Rixson template showing 1/8 of an inch. Minimum clearance required. So when I said 3/32 earlier, it's probably going to be a situation where you have a 1/16 here and then 1/8 here. So that's going to be 3/16. 1 15 minus 3/16. That's going to be 1 12/16, or 1 3/4. So 1/8 here and then a 1/16 here. I was saying 3/32. It's about 3/32. What they're saying is you need 1/8 of an inch minimum clearance required, and even in that case, they still want a 3/16 radius on that inside heel of the door. So that gap comes into play for a couple of reasons. Not only to account for anything that you're going to stick in here, but also to account for maybe a special hardware, a treatment on a piece of hardware, such as a Rixson floor closer. Okay, we could easily draw this in AutoCAD, and let's draw a quick frame. We'll make that 1.9375 at 90 degree. Okay, we're going to come out 0.625 at 0 degree. Okay, great. Let's come back up this way now. Okay, so now let's draw in a door, and let's say we'll be 1/8 of an inch over, and we'll say that it's square edged, and we'll make it 1 3/4, and we'll just make it an odd size. Okay, imagine this is substantially longer. It just doesn't matter. Let's put a pivot point. Our pivot point is 3/4 inch from the face of the door, and then 13/16 from the jamb over. Okay, let's do that. Let's draw a line from the jamb, 13/16. Okay, and let's just draw this line down. Now let's draw a line from 3/4, 0.75 at 90. Okay, we'll come over this way. All right, so that intersection right there is our pivot point. So let's draw a little circle here. Then let's clean this up. Okay, now what we're looking to do, this is 1/8 of an inch in here, I think. It actually looks quite heavy. No, it's not in the right position. This line is 3/16. So let's bring this down a 1/16 to make that truly 1/8 of an inch. Okay, now the point of doing this is the manufacturer's calling out that that template needs to have a 3/16 break on it. But let's see if that's the case. So let me select our door and group that, and then let me rotate it. Select the object, enter. Selecting our base point, here we go. So you can see, and just imagine that that door is super wide. But you can see when we get here, yep, that's awfully close. The distance from here to here is a 1/16, so this looks like it's 20 thousandths of an inch, a really tiny amount. Yeah, that's 20 thousandths, 0.0235 is what that is, really small. So yeah, that's why that's got to be broken like that. So what I could do is, let's remove our rotation. Let's come up with a 0.1875 radius. Okay, let's just move it. Now let's clean it up, trim. Okay, let's regroup it, let's rotate. Let's see if that fixed it. Yeah, sure did. I mean, it gave us the clearance that we need. Yeah, we now have a healthy 1/16 of an inch there. So we tripled our margin there by putting that 3/16 radius. So the bottom line is, what gap you need between the face of the stop and the face of the door is dependent on what are you putting in there. Well, in this case, we're not putting anything in there, but we sure have a hardware requirement. I would also be mindful of what weather stripping I was putting on here as well, only in the sense of taking it into account, because yeah, this moves. You got to be careful what's going to go there, meaning be cognizant of what's going to go there. You know, your maximum compression appears to be right before you're making contact with it, and then it starts to fall away. Okay, let's take a look at the definition just to make sure that we've covered it correctly. The distance between the frame stop, which is this face, this is the frame stop, this is the soffit, frame stop, and the face of the door, that's obvious. When the door is in the closed position, typically equal to the thickness of the silencer. So yeah, 1/8 of an inch is what they're calling out. Okay, awesome. The next definition is closed section. We'll take a look at that next. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.